Hi, and thank you for watching this video. I here want to give some, I would say, ranty comments concerning, firstly, the TV series of Daredevil from 2015, as well as give some comments on the character of Daredevil overall, and in that I will make explicit comparisons between Spider-Man and Daredevil. So let's get into it. So I'm about midway, I would say, through the Daredevil TV series from 2015. I know I'm late to the party as there's also Daredevil Born Again from 2025, but as there is a continuity between the two series, I figured I should just start off with the first TV series. And also feel free to watch my Spider-Man and Spider-Man 2 analysis. In any case, back to Daredevil, I think Charlie Cox here serves as an excellent Matt Murdock. The sort of sophistication, more serious undertones, the thriller-esque, suspenseful, portentous, to use a fancy word, thematics of Daredevil serve the character very well, and the overall aesthetics as well and fight sequences are excellent, I would say, in the TV series. So I'm very much happy with Charlie Cox. I should also mention that the acting is especially good when you see him removing the glasses, for there's literally neurons in the brain that are misfiring, so there's always a challenge for any actor to portray this confused or out-of-focused gaze, which he does very well in the TV series. I would say that I'm hoping he should incorporate more and more of the confidence that you see Daredevil portraying in the comics as he gains more experience. That is, the TV series start off with Daredevil very much as a novice, where he needs to incorporate more and more experience as time goes on. So I'm hoping more of the confidence from the comics will shine through as I get through more episodes. In any case, in the first few episodes, we really see him taking a starch beating, which is of course inherited from his father as a boxer who was famous for taking a lot of punches. But it also brings similarity to, I think, Tobey Maguire's portrayal of Spider-Man, which is the portrayal where Spider-Man takes the most beating. There's no comparison here with Tom Holland or Andrew Garfield's portrayal of Spider-Man, in my opinion. Moving on to Wilson Fisk, here played by Vincent D'Onofrio, who we all remember from Full Metal Jacket by Stanley Kubrick. He's an excellent actor, although I would claim that Fisk serves as the most difficult character to portray properly in the series, as he is very much a larger-than-life character, someone who really pops out of the panels in the comics and who has a real sense of gravitas, and let's be honest, he is a very rotund figure, so I might have preferred to go all the way in terms of exaggeration of this character. Might even go the way of prosthetics. Something like Penguin's portrayal by Colin Farrell comes to mind would be a good approach, I think, technically, to bring the character to life in the real medium format, which is, like I said, always going to be more challenging than perhaps other mediums such as animation. And in that regard, I would love a Daredevil animation series, something akin to Invincible perhaps, where you really bring in the grittiness and violence and adulthood thematics of Daredevil, which you can do as Matt Murdock is very much a serious character. Lastly, I would say in regards to the TV series, I was less than happy with the portrayal of Foggy. I think he needs to be a lot more goofier, funnier, as he is in the comics. I might prefer something like an actor like Jonah Hill, who would bring in a lot of palette of improvisation, which I think would help to catch Murdock off guard and get him off balance, which is excellently done in the comics. So I would go more that route, I think, with a actor portrayal, I think. Now, getting on to discussion of Daredevil himself as a character, this is of course a character in essence that has to portray limitation in terms of being blind, but this is a very common archetype in terms of mythology. You see instances of Greek, Norse mythology. I'm sure you can find equivalents in Hindu mythology as well, where we can take one example, for instance, Tyr, the Nordic god, who is a brave god of law and justice, who famously sacrificed his right hand to the monstrous wolf Fenrir as a pledge of trust. Now this has of course a lot of mythological significance in that Tyr is not retaining his full physical completeness. in order to save the cosmos. So this is very much something that is done to the character, but he transcends this in order to save the cosmos, just like Daredevil needs to transcend the limitations, where upon getting blindness, he is of course imbued with superhero abilities. Likewise, in the medium of movies, this is no strange theme or archetype. We have, for instance, kung fu movies where this is very common. Might bring up One-Armed Swordsman by Chang Cheh from the 60s, 1967 I believe, or The One-Armed Boxer. We can move on to samurai films where you have characters such as Saitoichi, the blind swordsman. So very much a common trope introduced here to comics, where you also see equivalents in mythology and films as well. Now getting to Parker versus Murdock, I would say that Murdock serves, as I mentioned before, very much as a mature, sophisticated character. And in that regard, due to his limitations of powers, he would, I claim, be a poor fit for the Avengers. At least he would be relegated very much to a non-main cast. Whereas Parker is very much overpowered in terms of abilities, but does not know the full extent of his own abilities. This is, I think, clear from the comics. I've mentioned this before. When he fights with, for instance, the Hulk and survives, he's seen surviving getting thrown around, which is rather absurd. That must mean that he is incredibly powerful. So what Matt Murdock in eventuality would bring to adventures, I would say, is a lot of maturity and experience, which they could incorporate, but he would not be the main cast, let's put it like that. There's also the maturity in terms of Murdock taking his daytime persona equally seriously, whereas Parker is much more loose with this in terms of his own vocation. For Murdock, he is part of a top law firm and is very much a practicing top lawyer. So this is again a contrast. We can both see Daredevil as well as Spider-Man as serving as an organic response to the systemic urban pathology of neighborhood crime. That is, they are both very much localized, and they are someone who suppresses aggressive takeovers, but does through non-deadly means. For Murdock, he is very much bound by Catholicism, which serves as his moral inspiration, but which also causes a lot of guilt for the character. Can also make a comparison with Daredevil versus Spider-Man in terms of scenarios where this is portrayed mostly in the comics, where you see both characters evading police capture, where for Spider-Man in this situation the police are often portrayed as mistaken. There's very much a naivety at play, plays into a lighter mood, comedic tone, but for Murdock, he is very much bound to uphold the law by his own personal integrity. Even if the police are mistaken, he must submit to their authority, bearing the fact that he is a lawyer, and he must preserve the courtroom as the proper forum for dispute resolution. So there is a subjugation to authority in terms of subscribing to a larger picture of public safety. So again, this will be a serious conflict for Matt Murdock versus his persona of Daredevil. There is, of course, as I mentioned earlier, a very strong religious conflict in terms of Catholicism at play in Daredevil, and this is very essential to incorporate in the TV series, which I'm glad that they did do, and they even incorporated a sense of which the priest serves as his personal moral guide, which I think is also important. So Matt Murdock here is also a contradiction in many terms in terms of his aesthetics, which is also done very well in the TV series, as he functions as a performed spiritualized paradox in that he mirrors the devil, seemingly while conforming to the path of serving God at the same time as practiced through his Catholicism. So this is very much an interesting thematic, and I should go into a deeper dive of this theme in a separate video. As a side note, I would say here that I strongly recommend the comic book story Guardian Devil by Kevin Smith, the director who went into the comic book medium, where I think the spiritual thematics are very much played out in a proper manner. But as always with Kevin Smith, things get very verbose, but this is to be expected. So yeah, check that comic book series out if you're interested. In addition, I would say, to Frank Miller portrayals, who serves as the main inspiration for the TV series. Miller both reinvented Batman as well as Daredevil and brought a lot of seriousness and realism to the character portrayal. And let's remember in terms of Wilson Fisk, who we mentioned earlier, that Fisk originally served as an enemy of Spider-Man, but the association nowadays is very much as an enemy of Daredevil. But this is in very much large part, or in full part, to Frank Miller. Lastly, here for this rant, maybe I should consider another difference between Spider-Man and Daredevil, now in terms of their pledge fulfillment. First, for Spider-Man, in relation to the dying Uncle Ben, he is given almost explicitly instructions that he should aspire to the costume by the quote, "With great power comes great responsibility." Now contrast this with Matt Murdock. He is told that he should use his mind rather than his physicality and should not get involved in brawls. So we see Murdock explicitly contradicting his own father in terms of the pledge. But that might explain why he so highly overcompensates in terms of his work domain of having his own successful law firm shared with Foggy, as well as being like one of the top lawyers in New York. There is, incidentally, as a fun trivia, some panels in the comics by Miller describing the fact that he has one of the largest Braille collection in terms of his own personality. So he is very much an academic in that sense, and this might seem as a sort of psychological overcompensation, as I mentioned earlier. So yeah, this sums up this sporadic rant video, and I will continue to make more philosophy and movie analysis content, perhaps explore other fields as well, and let me know if you have any comments on Daredevil in the comment section, and I will check that out. And like I mentioned, I should make a devoted video at some point once I finish the TV series overall for a final verdict. So yeah, please like and subscribe, and cheers. See you in the next video.